Welcome. We are here today with Darina DeBenedictis, who wants to bring more creativity into the lives and spaces of people she encounters on a daily basis. This fabulous, multifaceted woman has a passion for both creativity and education. She's an artist, teacher, scientist, lover of the ocean, designs and crafts polymer clay jewelry, extending her love for art by infusing her passion into every piece. Darina also founded Spark Learning, a STEAM-based education program merging art and science, emphasizing curiosity, self-trust, and encouraging pre through elementary school students to think like artists and scientists, to answer their own questions through experimentation and exploration. An ultra hobbyist, Darina is dedicated to fostering creativity and sparks of inspiration that empower others. Welcome to our podcast.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
Yeah, we are too. We are too. Oh my gosh. There's so much talk about science and art, even discussions about, is there in fact science and art, or is there art and science, which of course we get things like biomimicry from. It sounds like you actually get to live that though, rather than just discuss it. So can you give us a bit of background, like how you came across your current craft?
In school, my favorite subject has always been science. And then growing up, my mom was the Girl Scout troop leader. So I was doing arts and crafts all the time. We were always having people over my house. And yes. So we had 25 pairs of scissors, so many markers, crayons, everything you could think of. And so, yeah, from a young age, I loved arts and crafts. And that kind of brought me through to middle school ages and high school, where I was constantly doing every DIY project under the sun, trying out all sorts of hobbies. Yeah, just kind of testing the waters and dipping my toes in the waters. But at the end of college, I had the opportunity to work at an elementary school, and I was running marine science programs after school. And so that kind of allowed me to combine the two. So I studied marine biology and geology in school. Through that, my lessons were very much science-based, but I loved incorporating the art aspect. So I did a lot of projects with clay and having the kids maybe model certain marine critters or paint different things, or yeah, just things like that. But I love the combination of the two. And so because I have had so much of that in my own life, I loved bringing that into the classroom spaces that I teach in. Anyways, so I started with the after school program in college, but then through that, started teaching enrichment programs in various ways. So I did some summer camps and after school programs, and kind of through the journey of that, started getting involved with other schools and bringing my programs into different schools. At the same time, I was also teaching preschool art, which was really fun.
Totally different area.
Yes, very messy, as you can imagine, but just so full of wonder and creativity. And at that age, they're maybe 3 years old, and so it's before the world gets to them. And they're just, I mean, the most creative individuals, and they have so much inspiration inside of them. And I think so often, especially in preschool, but also through elementary school, a lot of that creativity is stunted through a lot of education and a lot of the school systems. Yeah. And so that's what I love to offer. I mean, so now in my programs, like I said, I'm at a handful of preschools and some elementary schools, and I get to come in as the fun teacher, which is great.
And the one that the students actually look forward to.
Exactly. So getting to, I don't know, yeah, just get them excited about science. And half the time they don't really even know that they're doing science.
Well, it seems like you do an amazing job, because I'm still not hearing a separation, which, is uncommon, because this is just not only who you are, but this is also your work, what you do. And I have to, if whether it's the elementary school students that you're working with, or whether it's the adult programs that you run, if they're seeing it the same way, if it's bleeding over for them also, Because for you,
Right.
obviously, it's one and the same. There's not a separation.
Right,
Okay.
right. It's just like, I think overall, just the concept of wonder and questioning, and I mean, that's tied so much into science as well as creativity. It's just taking the small risks and testing things out and figuring out what works and what doesn't, and kind of following your small little passions. And I mean, that's even as small as like a preschool science experiment or a little art project that like maybe seemingly doesn't really matter that much, but then
But it
getting to
does.
see, yeah, yeah,
It
it does.
does.
It grows. Yeah.
So why did you choose of all things? And I know our audience will find out, but I know that you have multiple passions. Um,
Yes.
but why this one in particular? Why polymer clay over anything else? Why is that one that stands out for you?
I have always been drawn to using clay. I think mainly because it's like adult Play-Doh. It's just fun to
It
use.
sounds so much fun.
Um,
Oh, okay, I can go to the store now. I'm good.
yes, yes, yes. Go get some clay, put it in your hand, just see what happens. It's a really easy medium to practice with, I think,
Okay.
because I don't know, to me, a blank canvas where you're meant to put a nice drawing or painting on is a little bit intimidating. But with something like clay, you're just kind of rolling it in your hands or creating shapes with your hands.
Mhm.
Um, it
You're
seems a
actually
little bit
creating
more
with your
tactile. Yeah,
okay.
yeah, it's very tactile.
Okay.
It's really easy to redo if you mess up. You just roll it back in a ball and start over.
Sure do.
Um, yeah, yeah. I
Unlike life,
think
unlike
it's very
life.
forgiving. Yeah. Yeah. So I think I've always been drawn to using clay, but specifically with jewelry, I started making polymer clay jewelry in 2019. I think I enjoy making jewelry out of clay because it feels like every piece is very original and unique. It's even difficult for me to make the same piece again, especially if I'm doing different techniques like marbling the clay or creating patterns with the clay. And so to me, it provides a very one of a kind feeling to the jewelry. And I also love that there's two parts of the process. So you have the first aspect where I'm sitting down and creating a whole tray of the clay pieces and kind of getting my hands messy with the clay, and then bake it in the oven, pull it back out, and then there's a whole nother step to the process. So rather than using like beads or something that's already created, I love creating the pieces myself. So
So
yeah,
you're
that's why I love
actually
clay.
so you're actually creating within the process. You're creating within an already creative process. Is that correct?
Exactly. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's neat. That's neat.
Yeah.
Okay. All
Mhm.
right. And so what in particular do you like about that process? Like what are your thoughts like do you come into it with like a predetermined direction, or while you're filling the clay are you listening? And I say that because I'm a writer,
Yeah,
so
yeah,
I know that sometimes our characters do in fact speak, we create them, but we can force
yeah,
them. That's not natural. So are you getting a feel for what the clay is, what is better to become?
yeah. I think another thing with clay is it provides a good warm up, because I mean you literally have to warm up the clay before you start to use it. I also mix a lot of my own colors and create what's called like a little slab. So I'll sift it through a pasta machine, and so kind of the process is like I'll set out all of the slabs, and
Mm.
so it kind of acts as like my artist palette. And so when I'm sitting down to work, I guess it provides a really easy ramp in to the creative process for me, because I know when I sit in my chair, the first thing I'm going to do is create my palette that I'm working with for the day. And then, I mean, I'm physically going to have to warm up the clay before I even start. So I think that kind of gets the gears moving
Gotcha.
and helps me kind of figure out where I'm going for the day. And it is fun. Like I don't really sit down with a plan or a color scheme in mind, and I kind of just let it unfold and watch as it happens. And
Oh, wow.
some days I'll have all the neutrals, and then some days I'll have like these big bold bright colors. I've been really drawn to like orange recently, as I was telling you, or magenta or lime green. But yeah, it's kind of fun to look back throughout the years and throughout different seasons what colors I was drawn towards. And it's kind of telling of certain things.
So a
So
story of color, basically.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I
Over
found that with
time.
Yeah, I found that with clay when I'm making jewelry, but also with a lot of the other mediums that I'm working in as well.
A question I wanted to ask before we get too far, because we are going to get into your creative process. But
Yeah,
this one is just a general one, which is there something that you gain personally? Is there something that you gain from process that you don't experience with outcome?
I think yes, definitely. Even in my teaching, so I'm teaching my STEM programs for preschool, elementary school, and then I teach adult workshops as well to make
Mhm.
jewelry. I think with both of those, obviously with the jewelry workshops, they want to go home with a pair of earrings. But in my STEM programs, I try to teach most of my lessons process based over product based, meaning that I do really try to focus on the process. And I want the kids to be able to walk away with something that they're really excited about or proud of. But a lot of it, like a lot of my lessons, the way that I plan them is sometimes they might not even walk home with something, or they might not actually do the experiment how it's supposed to go. And that's the whole purpose of the lesson, is to kind of prove to them. I mean, that's exactly what science is. There's a lot of mistakes that happen,
Right.
or quote unquote mistakes, but that's the process of learning. So yeah, I think I 1,000% love just the idea of process. I love hearing what other people do artistically or scientifically, or I mean, just in their life, like what their processes look like. I think it's always been something that's fascinated me.
So, being that you work with these different age groups in particular, like the adults, that life definitely has come into the picture, and the preschool, elementary students, not as much. Have you seen commonalities between them?
Oh, yes,
What are
definitely. I tell people all the time, whether I have a class, so I teach as young as 2 years old and then
okay,
as old as 65 years old, maybe older, depending
okay,
on the class. And so it's hilarious to me because in every class, maybe you have a class of 15 people. In every class, you have the one student that needs to know every detail before they start. Then you have the one student that doesn't listen to a single thing that I've said, but just kind of goes and jumps in and does whatever they want. Yeah, so I think there's such parallels between a class of 2 year olds or a class of 50-year-old women, which is really fun. I think especially because with adults I am working with clay, and that's probably something that they haven't touched or played with or worked with maybe
in
since they were
decades.
a kid.
Yeah.
So it really brings them back to, and they say it all the time too. It really is like adult Play-Doh, or it's just fun to play with. And I
So
think that it
action.
kind of, yeah, they're not expected to be really good at it because
Okay.
they probably like haven't done it in this way, or especially the jewelry making. I mean, you're getting out the pliers and it's
Okay.
difficult. And so I think it just allows them to, they're relearning something new, which maybe they haven't done in a while, and learning a new skill, which of course to 2 year olds, everything is new to them. And
Oh
so
yeah,
there
of
is
course, of
such
course.
a parallel
That's that
for sure.
wonder. Oh wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it sounds like they are arriving at the same point, but just at two different stages of life. Okay.
Exactly.
That's awesome.
Exactly. And I
So,
think they surprise themselves a lot too. Like at the beginning of my workshops, I try to ask, like, raise your hand if you think that you're a creative person, raise your hand if you
mm,
think you're going to be good at this. And a lot of times people are like, yeah, I'm just kind of here for fun. I don't think I'm going to be very good at this. I'm definitely not creative. But then at the end of the workshop, they walk home with a pair of earrings on that they're really proud of and they will actually wear.
oh yeah,
So it's just fun.
of
It's fun
course.
to kind of give them that belief in themselves.
So now when you were starting out though, because there are wide variety of perspectives, perceptions, myths, biases, whatever, when it comes to art. Did you realize that you held any of those things, or what was the greatest myth that you busted?
Oh, yes. Yes, yes, yes.
Uh oh.
I think the greatest myth that I believed at the time and was able to bust was just the idea that people are already doing it. And of course, I'm not the first person to make jewelry, and I'm not the last. I'm not the first person to teach science classes, and I'm not the last. But if you haven't read it, I would highly recommend the book. It's called Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert.
Okay.
Um,
No, I haven't
and
read that.
I highly recommend. I love that book. I read it actually right before I opened Adorned. And so I was in the process of, I guess, learning how to work with clay and learning how to make jewelry. And then read that book, and that is exactly what catapulted me into just taking the leap and opening up the business. She just talks a lot about, yeah, just that concept that the world has a lot of art, but the world doesn't have your own art.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
and the world has jewelry, but it doesn't have my jewelry. And just that whole concept of people are already doing it, but it doesn't mean that you can't. And it's the kind of unlocking creativity in yourself is going to unlock it in other people. And so I think it's less about, if you take the product out of it completely, just think about all the people that are leaning into their own creative process. And yeah, I mean, if we have a world of people that are more willing to lean into that, then we would have such a different world.
Wow.
So
Yeah, that's
yeah,
nice.
I cannot recommend that book enough.
Yeah, I'll add that to my reading list. It
Yes.
carries a lot of weight, especially in a heavily saturated world, because that's
Yeah.
something that people use as an excuse to hold themselves back. It's like, well, everybody's already doing it, or there's already so many people in this world. How am I different, or what do I have to offer? And you
Right.
hit the nail on the head, which is
Mhm.
the world is missing your gift, and
Mhm.
that
Mhm.
is what creativity is. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's a life lesson definitely that we can all learn from. So, about your art now, similar question. Are there any interesting trivia or historical facts that played a role in throughout time, or what can you give us just a little bit history?
Honestly, history-wise, I'm not too sure. I do know, like, one thing that fascinated me at the beginning of working with clay is just kind of understanding how different types of clay can be. So I used what is called polymer clay, and that is an oven baked clay. So probably something that you've used as a kid, but yeah, you bake it in the oven
Mhm.
versus I actually just started taking some pottery classes. And so that's like a
Really?
whole different, yeah, yeah.
Oh, wow.
That's the same medium. You're still using clay, but it is wildly different.
Okay.
Um,
That's good
and
to know because we have an on-site interview at
uh-huh,
Pottery Studio as part of this series. So yeah, I'll note that. So they're vastly different.
vastly different. Yes.
Okay.
So with pottery clay, your hands are getting a lot more sloppy and things are slippery, and even if you're not working on the wheel, the
Okay.
clay is just a lot more like wet and messy. Whereas the clay that I use is it comes in a little block and is usually colored. You can get it a color of white, but yeah, it's usually colored so you can mix it and you bake it in the oven. And the nice thing about it is it never dries out. So where I'm when I'm doing my pottery classes, you have to cover it up and make sure that it doesn't dry out, and it's very temperamental. Polymer clay is really nice because you could leave a tray of clay pieces or just the package of clay open for forever and it would never dry out unless you bake it.
Really?
Uh, yeah, so it's just
Wow.
been kind of cool to see the differences in kind of testing out. I think my pottery class has like opened up a whole new fascination for clay. And
Wow.
it's crazy because you're thinking it's just, clay is just, elements from the earth. And like when you think about natural clay, and humans have just figured out ways to use it. And it's, I mean, just, yeah, the whole history of ceramics and pottery, that alone is so interesting to me. And to see that we were doing this, like my pottery teacher says all the time, like, it's a very intuitive process because we've been doing it for so long. And
Okay.
so humans, at the beginning of time, or just for so many years, were making things with the earth. And so it's why it feels so intuitive for us to be in pottery class and kind of knowing already what to do and being able to trust your instincts. And
That makes sense. That
yeah,
really does. That makes sense.
yeah. So I guess Polymer is like a version of that, but
That reconnection.
different in its own way.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
Yeah,
Yeah, like that reconnection. Okay.
exactly.
Gotcha. So you've already touched about the blank canvas, what it means to you, but you refer to yourself as an ultra hobbyist also. So have you found, because you are experienced and have interests in a wide variety of hobbies, have you found that there are certain aspects of your creativity that are better expressed in other medium, or do you cross over to another one because maybe the medium you're currently working with is limited?
The freshest example in my mind is my pottery class. In the last 6 months, I've been really committed to investing in myself in different ways and learning. I think because I'm a teacher, I want to be a student as well. So, through that, I have learned so much about how I am as a student and as a creative. And yeah, I started this pottery class. I started learning how to surf. I started learning how to sail, doing a sailing
Really?
class.
Oh my gosh,
Yes.
that sounds like
um,
fun. Outdoors
yeah.
as well.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
But what I've realized is when I'm learning something new, um, I mean, I think a lot of people are like this, but for me in particular, I I like to know the rules of the game so that later I can break them.
I
And so,
agree. That's what they're
yeah,
for.
exactly.
You got to know what to do at first. You got to know what the parameters are, and then you
Yes,
get
yes,
creative. Yeah.
exactly. So I think the same applies to when I'm entering into a new creative endeavor. At the beginning, I like to know almost what could go wrong or what not to do, and then how to do things. Like I feel like I become more of a perfectionist at the beginning of learning something new, and then I
Oh,
have to learn and
because you want to get
practice.
it right.
Exactly, and
Okay.
really hone in on the skill. But then after, I feel like I kind of hit a threshold, and then from there, it's just the world is my oyster. And um, yeah, I think I've seen that in like a lot of different mediums that I've used or skills that I've been trying to learn. Another, as you said, I'm ultra hobbyist, love to try all new things. In addition to jewelry making, one thing that I'm really passionate about, that's kind of just for fun, just for me for now, is weaving. And
Nice.
so I built my own loom, which is actually a lot
Really?
easier than you would think. It sounds impressive, but it's
Yeah.
super easy.
No, that
Um,
is impressive. Forget that. That's impressive. Oh my gosh.
um, so I mean, it's basically just a canvas, nailed some nails in the top and bottom, and then you use a string to go up and down. Um, and there's a whole bunch of knots that you can learn. And I think as I said, taking the sailing class, I've learned some different knots through that.
Right.
I know how to macrame as well. And I mean, it just reminds me of like when you used to make, I don't know if you used to make the friendship bracelets when you were younger, um, but I'm constantly doing that in some of the camps that I'm teaching as well. But just figuring out the different types of knots. So when I first learned how to weave,
Mhm.
um, there's so many knots. I mean, you could YouTube or look up pictures of how to do every single knot, and I was really committed to learning all sorts of knots and knowing how to do them the correct way. And then over time, at this point, I don't, maybe they exist, but maybe I'm making them up. But just kind of working the yarn or string or whatever I'm using in a different way. Um, and I found that it's a lot more freeing, and I'm not, maybe not necessarily doing it the correct way, but I find a lot more freedom in it, and it's a lot more fun to do it that way. So yeah, like I
In a
said, I'm
manner
kind
that
of
works
like,
for you, that suits the situation.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, learning it the correct way, and then after just throwing all the rules down the drain and doing what's fun for me, because that's the whole point. It's like I'm not an artist because I need to be this certain type of artist. I'm an artist because it's
Right.
just fun. Yeah.
Right. Right. I
Mhm.
think there's as many different ways to be artists as there are artists.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
If we all did the same, it wouldn't be as fun.
Right, because there's a difference between technique and method and process and system, etc. Um,
Exactly.
but being that you are such an ultra hobbyist, have you found a common thread that runs through that ties all your creativity together?
I guess the mediums that I'm the most passionate about, so working with clay, and then I compare that to weaving, even watercolor a little bit. It all feels very tactile. It's also very easily reversible, which I love
Ah,
because, like
okay.
I was saying earlier, if you roll or if you mess up with the clay, you just roll it up and start over. If I mess up while weaving, I can just pull out the knot. I also love crocheting. Same thing.
I've done that. I know
Pull
how to
it
do
back.
that.
Yeah,
I do know how
yeah.
to do that. Knitting, no,
Uh,
I know how to crochet though.
yes, yes. I don't know how to knit either. That's maybe I'm gonna learn that. But even watercolor is a little bit more forgiving too. I'll usually draw with pencil so I can erase and then paint over, and I mean, watercolor is just a lot looser and easier to fix if you mess it up. And so yeah, I think I am drawn towards forms of art or mediums that are forgiving and that I can really have like a sensual experience with, a
Yeah.
sensory experience with.
Okay. So, where do your ideas, your concepts, where do they originate from?
Ugh, everywhere. But
Why am I not surprised?
yes, I know.
But
I
no, I
think
mean, that's great though, because that's the sign of a life well lived and that you're not holding yourself back from things that you want to delve into. So, where do some of your best concepts and ideas originate from?
yeah, I don't know. It's cool because like I was saying before, I'm not necessarily when I'm sitting down to create, I'm not envisioning, okay, this is where my inspiration came from and this is where it's going to take me. But I'm able to kind of look back at past projects or past earring collections or weavings or drawings and figure out, looking back in retrospect, figure out where the inspiration came from,
Mm-hmm.
which is really cool to kind of pinpoint. I think a lot of my creativity or inspiration comes from just being outside. I love the beach, so a lot of my creations are very inspired by the ocean. Just the colors of the sea and the beach and corals. I love the bright colors of corals. Um, and yeah, a lot of the things that I draw tend to be ocean related. Um, I think because I have a fascination for the science behind it all, I like creating images of these creatures that look pretty realistic, but then bringing in really fun pops of color. I think also I've noticed that when I travel to certain places, like I went to Death Valley, California, and there a lot of the sands are pink and blue and like very
Oh,
neutral
wow.
colors amidst it. I know it's as a geologist or
Okay.
someone who studied geology, it was like one of the most fascinating places to me because I mean the sand is literally turquoise or bright pink or like lavender purple.
Okay.
Yeah, so I noticed the whole time that I was there I
Oh, so
couldn't wait
there's
to
life
get
in
back
Death
home.
Valley.
Yeah, yeah. Exactly. It's just in the color. Um
Wow.
but I realized when I'm on trips like that, or you know, I just went to Colombia, South America, and there's obviously so many colors there. And so when I came home, I realized I was being more drawn to like the brighter colors. And after Death Valley, I was more into those like neutral pastels. And going to an island is going to give me a very different experience than going to Europe and being in Italy. And I mean, just the shapes that I'm drawn towards or the colors that I'm drawn towards when I'm creating, it
So your
varies a lot. And
experiences are infusing the art that you make at the moment. And you're
exactly.
bringing, I guess it can be said that you're bringing a bit of that experience with you.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. It's kind of a way of, I mean, you could go on a trip, you could tell someone every detail that you remember about it, but you're never going to actually be able to explain to someone what your trip
Right.
really was like.
Right.
So I think it's just like my small way of being able to share where I've been, what I've done, what I've experienced in life.
Oh,
So, Yeah.
So tell me, because you've mentioned your color palette several times during our conversation so far.
Yes.
And out of curiosity, do certain palettes, I'm thinking like the neutrals, the muted tones, do they allow you to tell a story or to create in a way that more vivid colors do not? You as the creator,
Mhm.
you know.
Yeah. I think for jewelry wise, I'll do like pop up markets or different events. Even my workshops, I will create certain colors and allow the students to be able to use certain colors. And I think it almost in a way, because I'm offering certain colors to my students and to myself, it allows you to be more creative in other aspects. And so when I'm using the same colors over and over and the same schemes of colors, I'm able to get really funky with the shapes that I'm using or patterns that I'm adding onto the colors. It also, I mean, obviously, as a brand, it creates a really cohesive look. A lot of people know the earrings, like ear or polymer clay earrings are not a brand new thing. Like a lot of people have made them and worn them, but even to the point where when I'm walking around town, I can see someone wearing earrings and I know the ones that I've made, which is really cool. I mean, that's one of the coolest things
Yeah. It's kind
that's
of like
happened is,
seeing new. It's like,
yes, exactly. Seeing someone random, maybe that they bought them at a market in the past and to see them actually wearing it is amazing.
oh,
But yeah, I think it kind of is my brand in a sense. And then for me, it's fun. Like I said, every once in a while, I'm super drawn to these random colors or brighter colors, maybe, or, but somehow it still works within the scheme.
yeah.
So,
Well, that's got to
yeah.
be your creativity that's weaving that together. So I have no doubt about that. Now,
Yeah.
so we've talked so much about creativity. We've discussed color palette and how you're weaving all these experiences together. Let's delve into your actual creative process because when you mention pasta machine, I'm like, I
Yeah.
gotta ask her about that. But
Yes. Yes.
let's set the scene.
Yes.
You're creating an environment. Let's say that you have a new project. So walk us through what your process looks like, if you will.
Yes. Okay. I'll set the scene. First off, I have a candle on, my mug of coffee. Those are the two most important aspects of the beginning of my process. um, then, yes, there's lots of tools that I use. As you said, a pasta machine, which people are always surprised by.
Yeah,
But I
I am.
have, yes,
I'm in
yes,
that group. Yeah.
yeah. I'm in that group. But I will show you.
Oh,
So
really?
I use, yes, I have some clay with me. So this is the type of clay that I use, and it comes in kind of like a block like this.
Oh, nice.
Um, and
Is that sage?
yeah, it's like an army green sage color.
Okay.
Um, one of my favorites. So I have the block of clay, and then what I will do usually is you start rolling it between your hands to kind of warm it up. Because obviously it's just a block at this point. So I'm getting it from a block into a ball. And so you're warming it up in your hands and kind of morphing the shape into a ball. And then from there, you'll take a roller or a dowel or something, and I have like a little acrylic roller. You'll flatten it out, and then after that, that's when I put it through the pasta machine. So you'll kind of put one end in and roll it. And so this, I used to not use it. And so I would just roll out all of the clay slabs, and it would be such a process and my hands would be hurting. Um,
Okay.
but the pasta machine is super nice because it creates a super, super flat surface that's all uniform. So there's no bubbles and it's a flat surface. You're not using your hands as much, so it doesn't get like dust specks and things inside of the clay. It also is really easy to mix clay that way. So you add a slab would be after you put it through the pasta machine.
Okay.
The slab is just the piece of the clay. And so you could add two slabs on top of each other and then put that through the pasta machine. Or usually what I'll do is kind of roll different colors of clay together. And then put it through the pasta machine a couple times, and then that's like my favorite part is it creates a marbled look. So it looks like a gemstone or
Oh, wow.
geode, or um,
Okay.
it looks like it's been painted on too.
That makes some wonderful patterns, so I would imagine.
Oh, yes,
Okay.
yes. Like the most, I think that's the most fun part about using the different colors of clay. Because as I'm mixing my own colors, I'm getting the marbled look along the way. And so usually I'll stop halfway through mixing the colors and use that, and then maybe take half of that slab and then keep coloring that, or keep making that color, but then use the marbled as one of my slabs as well. So the way that I like to work is I create, as I said earlier, a whole palette of my slabs for the day.
Mm-hmm.
So I've got them all laid out, and then I have these little cookie cutters. So they're just like little metal or plastic cutters that I'll use, and roll out the slab again just to make sure it stays. Usually I use like a silicone or plastic mat so that
Okay.
it stays stuck. And then you kind of just push the cutter down into the clay and it stays stuck on the mat, which is nice. So I usually have all of my slabs, and I'll usually do one slab at a time, and finish out a color. Or if I'm doing earrings that are more multicolored, then I'll figure out the shapes that I want and just cut into each clay that I want. And so sometimes my process looks like that, where I'm starting with I always make the slabs first. But sometimes I'll just cut into the clay and not really think too much about the shapes and just see what happens. Other times I'll like line up the metal cutters how I want them. And
Okay.
this is usually when I'm playing more around with shapes. So I'll just line up the different cookie cutters in different ways and kind of use new ways of setting it up, I guess. So yeah. And then once you finish with that, then you take a toothpick and you're just making a little hole in each piece of clay. And people ask all the time how long that process takes, and it really varies because obviously sometimes the pieces are a lot more intricate if I'm marbling a lot of pieces, or if I'm completely starting from scratch and mixing all the colors.
Gotcha.
Then it's going to take longer. But you can also save the clay too, which is great. So the extra, or like the remnants, basically like the extra clay that you've cut out, I'll usually start adding those colors together. And so then the next time I come back, I can kind of start from there as my baseline. And so I've already got brand new colors mixed up. Anyway, so then you bake them.
So why do
you
you use a toothpick to punch a hole in a plate?
So the hole is meant for the jewelry findings or the jump rings that you're adding. So after you bake the clay doesn't change shape or anything.
Mm-hmm.
It stays exactly how it is when you put it in the oven. So the hole is for the little rings that you use to attach the pieces together. So yeah, once I take them out of the oven, that's step 2. Like I was saying before, it's really fun to get to that point.
Mm-hmm.
And then once I start getting a little bit tired of the clay aspect of it, and I'm kind of feeling a little burnt out with that, once I put them in the oven and take them back out, it's like my eyes have been opened again. I'm like just as excited to sit down again and like start a whole new process or a whole new side of the creation. So that usually I have like a bunch of little metal pieces. So I usually like to take the hardened clay pieces off the tray and kind of line them up where I like them, or which pieces I think look good together. The way that I do it might be completely different than how somebody else does it, but I think that having the routine of doing it this way is really helpful for me and allows me to be, I think, overall more creative because I'm like working within this routine that I've set for myself. So
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I mean, you are informing your own experience. So your process is one that came about by your experience and what works for you over time, what you've discovered. So yeah, no. Have you ever scrapped a project though? Like, have you ever been midway and just said, "Nah, this is not it." And what
yeah.
if you have? Okay.
Yes, definitely. But again, the great thing about clay is I just roll it back up and start again. It's usually, so sometimes I'll make slabs with pieces of other colors of clay on top of it. So maybe I'm making a pattern, maybe like something floral or almost like terrazzo pattern. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but just different colors layered on top. And or I'll take the other side of my X-Acto knife and like sculpt into the clay to make different designs as well. And a lot of that is very experimental. So sometimes I don't like it. And the best part is I roll up the clay, but now that clay has all of these colors in it and incorporated into it. And so when I roll it through the pasta machine, that's when you get like really cool colors or like really surprising things where it kind of, the colors are bleeding into one another and you're just getting really cool stuff. And so even if it's a project that I have scrapped, then it usually ends up becoming like some of my favorite earrings. So definitely scrapped a lot of things, but I love I love the app.
I can see that. I can see that.
Yeah.
Because it's unintended and those probably become your limited edition pieces as well.
Exactly. Those are the pieces that I can't recreate even if I tried my absolute hardest.
Right. Yeah. And they add greater value to them, of course. You've referred to you like arts that allow you to deconstruct as easily as you can construct. And so we'll just say easily scrapped.
Yes. Yeah.
And I would imagine that when working with polymer clay, that knowing that's a possibility, scrapping your work, that's just comes with the territory, so to speak. So, if in fact that's a regular part of the process, do you think that people fear scrapping their work in general because they haven't built a solid slab per se, or never consider it scrapping their work as an option, or is it something else at work?
I guess it really does depend on the type of art that I am doing or that other people are doing. Again, a lot of the things that I am doing are easily scrappable. Even with science, it's really easy to, I tell the kids all the time that I teach, just do it. And if you mess it up, then we can always do it again. But I imagine, obviously, someone that's doing something that might seem more permanent, it'd be a lot harder for them to get in that mindset. I think, especially when I'm drawing, that's something that I really hate erasing, but it's part of the process. But I hate when I make a mistake and you try to erase it and you just can't. You can still see that pencil underneath.
That's why they made liquid paper. So
exactly, yes.
That doesn't work on sketching. So never mind.
Yeah. And so I don't know. I've noticed that when I am drawing, the way that I enter that process is a lot different, and I have to be in a different kind of mindset. And I'm still okay with making the mistake. Obviously, you're not going to draw perfectly every time, but I definitely am in a different headspace when I am drawing versus when I'm doing something that's more easily reversed. So I don't know. I'd be curious to know someone else's process that is more difficult to reverse and kind of see their thoughts on it, because I do stick to things that are easier to reverse for sure.
Yeah, that would make sense though, because what you're saying is that permanence is a factor, the degree of
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. Being though, what you're not saying is that even though you have the ability to scrap your work, that doesn't mean they aren't valuable. So, with that in mind, when did you start valuing your own creations?
Mm. I think right when I started Adorned, my jewelry business, is when I like actually put a numerical value to my work. I think I always valued it enough growing up and, throughout college. Like every single gift that I ever gave was usually something that I created or made. So I knew that it had enough value for it to be a gift. But yeah, I don't think I ever really set out to be someone who made something in order to sell it. But I think the value came, I think I was excited about what I was making. And I was creating a lot of earrings, and obviously I just explained the process to you, and you're not just sitting down and making one pair of earrings. So at the beginning, especially because I was just practicing and experimenting, I was creating whole trays of earrings in so many different colors. And I mean, I gave my mom so many earrings at the beginning and she gifted them
And
to
I'm
her
sure she wore
friends.
them all. So
Oh yeah, she still has those first ones and wears them religiously. Um, but I mean, it gets to a point where I give them to all my friends and my mom and all of her friends, and everybody was wearing them. And I mean, I would see them around town actually sporting them. And so from there, I was like, people were telling me all the time, you know, you could really sell these. And um, I think just for logistics sake, I was like, okay, I think I should because I have so many earrings. But also I think just hearing other people tell me that first,
okay.
um, or alongside what I was already maybe thinking for myself, is like I started to really believe that these things did have value. I think especially because jewelry is such a common thing. Like you can go to TJ Maxx or Target, like you can find jewelry anywhere.
Right.
Um, but for people to be going out of their way and asking specifically for, or asking me specifically for a certain pair of earrings, I think it's also fun for them. Like a lot of the first earrings that I was making, someone would give me a dress that they were wearing to a wedding, or maybe they're going somewhere special, and have a certain outfit in mind. They would either hand me the dress or show me a picture of kind of what they had in mind. And I think it
Uh-huh.
brings them into the process.
Okay.
And so I think that's what made it alluring at first. And that's what gave it value, is people being able to like step into the process with me and then create exactly what they want. So they're not just going to the store and getting something that everybody else has,
Right.
but they're able to wear something that's really unique and maybe something that I will not ever make again. Um, but they have it and they get to wear it and be excited about it. So yeah, I
Yeah.
think
Thank you for sharing your creative process, by the way. That was awesome to hear.
yeah, yeah. So I think it just inherently, the earrings like started to have value. And I see that with other forms of art that I do. I think earrings, it's more prevalent because I am selling them.
Mm-hmm.
But I think growing this business and teaching workshops, and I mean, it even inspired me to start Spark Learning, which is my educational business. And I don't know, I think just seeing that it was definitely hard, but it was also a lot easier to create a business. And I think there's so many myths or misconceptions or just different barriers that people think will come in the way, and they definitely do come, but it's also easy enough to, with the support of other people, to kind of get through those things. And now I'm the owner of two businesses that I'm really proud of and excited about. And I don't think I would have done any of that if it didn't start with like that one small, I don't know, time of my life where people were really valuing what I was doing.
Yeah, speaking of barriers, one of the barriers that commonly hear of, especially in particular in this space, is the starving artist stereotype. Can you speak to that?
Yes, yes. I could go on and on about this.
Yeah. I'm sure,
And
especially with this, diverse of experience that you have in various creative mediums. So yeah, what say
yeah,
you?
I think first off, I would definitely, as I said earlier, recommend the book Big Magic because she talks a lot about that in her book. Um, I think, I don't know, I think that artistry or the artist's life just has so many connotations around it. Um, and I think people are excited about the idea of living a creative life or like having hobbies or passions. But to see art forms as a career, um, I think that's really difficult for a lot of people. I think that some people see it as the starving artist story of this is going to be really difficult and not feasible and not easy, so don't do it. or the opposite, which I've received a little bit of, like, okay, I don't really know what you're doing. Are you really taking life seriously?
Oh, wow.
Are these things
Wow.
professional?
Wow.
Or it's just like, oh, that seems like something fun that you're doing, but it's not work. And so seeing it's just two completely different or opposite ends of the spectrum, where it makes it seem, or we're telling ourselves or other people a story that it's really difficult to make it as an artist,
Mhm.
which is
When there's a
definitely true.
making it
You
do
know, yeah, for different types of art, I'm like, I know that's true. You know, if you're auditioning for something or trying to pave your way, it's definitely difficult. And I've had to kind of navigate certain things through that. But I think for me, it's creativity is such, as you said, it's so intertwined into my life, and so I'm going to be doing it. And I worked as a scientist for a little bit right after college. I was doing marine geology work, which I loved, but I found myself incorporating so much art and creativity into my life outside of work. And I just see so much value in making that. I mean, you spend so much of your time working, and so I just wanted to figure out what are ways that I can actually make money from doing my art and fun from my creativity, because I know it is a gift that I think everybody has, but
definitely.
not everybody wants to use. Um, and yeah, I think I've had to create very unique opportunities for myself and really put myself out there and trust what I'm teaching and what I'm creating. And I mean, if you're doing that, then it will be possible. And I'm not a starving artist. I am very full to the brim, and there are lots of opportunities for me. And I have a lot of artist friends who would say the exact same thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
I wholeheartedly agree on that because it seems like a catch-22 situation. If on one hand, well, let me say preface with this. People forget that you can't actually create from joy. Okay.
hmm.
It doesn't have to be pulled all pain and suffering. But the catch-22 is on one hand, we hear all these stories and they pay handsomely for your pain. Okay.
Hmm.
They pay
Yes.
handsomely for the difficulty.
Hmm.
Everybody likes hearing that great stereotype story of how forlorn someone is and they were on the brink of this, that, and another. But on the other hand,
Hmm.
they diminish your work because of your
Hmm.
joy. And
Yeah.
so I think when it comes to art, we have to think it's like, how are we contributing towards the barrier? Because it's a
Hmm.
totally different thing for the well meaning parents who,
Hmm.
when a child goes to them and say, Mommy, 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 I want to be an artist. And it's like, oh,
Hmm.
that's awesome. That's awesome. Okay, what are you going to do for real?
Yeah. Yeah.
The parent means, I want you to be able to take care of yourself.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, what the child hears, what I want to do is not good enough. So now
Yeah.
find something else. Okay.
Right. Right.
And so that both kind of foster the other, but to say that you have to suffer for your art, where's the joy in that? you
Exactly.
know, because suffering is totally different than sacrificing or compromise for a short period of time. So,
Right. Right.
you know, yeah,
And yeah, it's not always, it's the reality for some people, but for me, it totally is not. And
awesome.
if I was just focusing on the suffering, my earrings would not be fun to wear, and nobody would enjoy the what I'm teaching.
Yeah, they may not be because you would pass on,
Yeah,
whatever it is
yeah.
that the belief eventually it gets passed on. Um,
Mhm.
so what is one thing that you wish people knew about your craft?
Honestly, just how fun it is. I mean, if you can't remember the last time you played with clay, like go to the store and get some clay.
I
um,
might do that
yeah,
because I
you
did
should
leave
do
clay
it.
out and it did get hard, so I may get.
Yeah. But I think, I don't know, I think that would give a lot of people, like, I mean, I make my friends, play with clay with me all the time, or practice the little lessons that I'm teaching for science classes. And I think just like to I wish that people understood why I'm doing what I'm doing, which, you know, I could sit down and explain to you with words and to every person that I came across, I would never actually get the point across. And so I think, you know, maybe it's a wish that couldn't actually come true, but I wish that people really understood why I was doing what I was doing. But yeah, overall, just how fun clay is and how fun it is to learn, to be an endless learner.
Well, I mean, you said it at the outset, is to bring creativity and joy into every encounter with
Hmm.
a person that you come across, and it's
Hmm.
infuse that same passion into your art, which is presently jewelry making for adorned jewelry, but so many other different aspects.
Hmm.
Definitely intrigued because as a marine scientist, you understand what that means on a whole nother level.
Yes.
And from the not only the choice of color palettes, but the unique creatures that you said that you were making, um,
Hmm.
that's a totally different expression. You more
Hmm.
than likely see color in a different way, not only art. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, it's awesome to have so many medium that you can embrace and just share that with us.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So what's next for you?
Oh, so many things. There's always so much on my mind, so many projects that I'm working on, and I love collaborating. I have, like I said, I have some artist friends that I'll sit down with and talk through my ideas and talk with their ideas, and um, a lot is coming, a lot that I'm excited about. Um, but I think just to keep creating, I have some events coming up for the spring, some workshops and pop ups. I haven't had a good creative session in a minute, so I'm excited.
Oh,
Sometimes this week, I mean, that's probably like, it's been maybe over a week, which is a long time for me.
okay.
um, Usually I try to do it as much as I can. Um, so I'm excited to just sit down with some clay sometime soon and see what I can make, or see what comes out of that process. Um, yeah, I mean, just to keep creating is what's next and will always be what's next.
Yeah, please do. Please do. But so that our guests, not our guests, so that our listeners and our viewers can find out
Mhm.
more about your work and some of these upcoming events, how can our audience find you?
Yeah. So on Instagram, my Instagram is adorned, ADORNED .goods. And that's where you can see a lot of my events that I'll post about, and different pictures that I've posted. And then website wise, I have a website for Spark Learning, which is sparklearningllc.com. And that has all the information about the educational programs that I run, um, and just like a little bit of my philosophy. And I have a section called My Promises to the Kids. And so it just tells you a lot about my mission and why I'm doing that. And then my Adorned website is adorned.shop. Um, and so that has all the information about my jewelry and workshops and kind of my mission behind Adorned.
Awesome.
Um, so those are probably the best ways to reach me. You can always message me on Instagram. Um, yeah, I love hearing from other people and other artists and people that are creative but don't really know how they want to bring themselves into the world as a creative. I have conversations with people all the time, about specifically that. Like, how do I get started? And what kinds of markets could I do? And what are the logistics behind actually starting a small business? And I
Right.
love answering those types of questions.
So, last question.
Mhm.
What does creativity mean to you?
It's one of my favorite words. And so I could say 8 million things about it. I think I'm living a creative life, and also a life that the whole purpose of me being here is to spread creativity. I really truly believe that. I see creativity as something that is in every single person, almost like an unlocked potential, that some people decide to unlock and then some people don't. And I think one of the conversations that I've had endless times is people saying to me, "Well, I'm not creative, but that's so great that you're doing what you're doing," or "I wish I was creative." And I think that's the biggest myth that the world has taught us, and that so much of the world believes. Um, but I think that I would just encourage you and others to just like really know that it's impossible for you to not be creative. I think maybe you just haven't found your medium. I think people um, maybe don't know what form of art they enjoy, or maybe they haven't learned the skill enough, or maybe they haven't gotten to that threshold of where they're able to just break the rules. And so I encourage you to just keep going and keep stepping into lots of new crafts, and just honing in on new skills. And I think eventually, if we all did that, then every person would find something, some way that they could be creative. And there wouldn't be that mentality of,
Yeah.
suffering and all of that that we were talking about before. But yeah, I think that's why I love sharing these creative lessons and science lessons to the little kids that I teach, because from the age of 2, I can tell one of my students, like, you're creative, you are curious, you're full of wonder,
Yes.
you are going to have lots of questions, and you're original in your thinking and unique as an artist in the way you're going to do things. And yeah, I think those are just like the lessons that I bring into the classes that I teach, whether it be 2-year-olds or adults. And I just wish that more people knew that they are creative. And it's not something that you can practice it, but it's not something that you have to like go out and get. Like, it's already in you. You already have the potential for it, but how are you going to grow it? Almost as if it was like a little seed. Like, you're just, yeah, you're cultivating it or watering the seed, and then it will grow. So, yeah.
Thank you, Darina.
Yeah, of course.
Thank you. We hope that you enjoyed today's episode, that you are better able to explore your own creativity in new ways, and that you find it applicable to other areas of your life. Darina, thank you again for being with us and sharing your enthusiasm and your obvious just love for creativity and bringing more joy into life.
Mhm.
I am Chris Vaughn. This is In Her Company.